I go through life kind of, with this mentality of fire, ready, set, or fire, aim, ready kind of thing. So I go, ready, set. It's like, whoa, MaryAnne's all the way over there. I think it was either you or Philip, they were like, yeah, we're gonna create this club. It's gonna be called the Failure Club. And I was like, yeah, that's great. Cool, when are we starting this?
Philip and I were, in roommates, and we were like, somehow both our ideas came together to create the notion of the Failure Club. And I remember just having sort of a really clear vision in my head about like what I thought it could look like. But MaryAnne provided the heart and the fuel to make it happen, right? She was just so supportive and so heartfelt about saying, oh my God, this is a great idea, guys. And when a beautiful, intelligent, passionate, accomplished woman like MaryAnne says it's a great idea, we're like, okay, let's go do it. Like, okay, she says it's great. I mean, it's great. Let's do it.
So funny. It's so funny how you say that, because I looked at you guys as these highly intelligent, accomplished, really successful guys that, in my eyes, I thought, whatever you put your mind to, you guys can totally do it. Like I really felt like you guys were the Superman in my life. And it was just, that's how I saw you. And I held you at that. I held you up there, and
wow, no, that's amazing.
You guys could totally do it, So I think it was you that brought that heart out. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I kind of am interested, I think the word failure often is something that people get like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
So, and I'm curious, like, obviously it sounds like you were kind of super excited about it from the beginning, partly because, you trusted that this idea, if it's coming from these guys, is going to be something you want to be part of. But what did that idea of failure mean to you, like before you went into this, I guess?
Well, I think because, like I said, because we had experienced so much together. We had already done the Ironman. We had trained together. And each day or each week that we spent together, we inspired each other. We held each other accountable. We really shared what was going on in each other's lives. And some of those things that we shared were, sometimes we were just like, we needed to have support because, we were feeling down, or, it's all aspects of life, relationships, work, in every aspect. And so there were moments of, well, I'm not really sure, or what should I do about this? And, there's a sense of, am I going to fail, or am I going to? So I think that we really, with that support behind it, and the way that we saw, like, I always saw the greatness in this group, in each person. So in my mind, I thought, you know what? If you do it, if you go for it, and it doesn't work out the first time, like if you fail, don't worry, man, you're going to be able to, you're going to be able to do it. So I think each one of us provided that for one another. And I remember being like hanging out, we'd go out, on a Friday night or something, and we were in like a lounge, or I don't know, or we'd be like training, and we were just brainstorming about stuff. That was the great thing about our friendship. and it was just, it got to the point where it was just like, because I think at the time in our lives, we were all single. We all kind of had this, what do you want? And, I would talk about how many kids I wanted in my life and how I saw myself in my career. And Gunil would say the same thing. And Phil would be like, yeah, I want to go into this. And, like we really got intimate in sharing like details, like Philip would be like, this is the kind of woman that I love. And, so it was just, I think just with this whole, this world that we really just were painting for ourselves in our lives, it was this shared collective, cohesive sort of mindset where when we started to talk about the Failure Club, it was just like, this is what we've been doing, you know, for the last whatever year or so together. And it is a story. It's like a journey all together that has supported us together as a group. And I think that really that was just like this launching pad to give us our lives that we have now. So, you know, and because I often, really often, when I think back to those roots, these are the memories that come up, you know, like when I talk about my life like this is before I met my husband. It was right before I met my husband. But like with my kids now, I can talk about this stuff, you know. These are the things that I learned. And when it was that time with Gunil and Philip, it was, you know, this was like some of the most powerful times in my life where I really learned so much about, you know, all these strategies that were successful.
And I'm curious, MaryAnne, what was your relationship with failure before that time? Because we met through some, you know, like Landmark, and we met online, but we experienced a lot of things together, right? We experienced Landmark, and we experienced the Ironman Triathlon, and this, and a lot of other communities. But what was your relationship to failure before that?
I think, you know, in the conventional sense, I think that same reaction that you were, you know, that we were talking about, I think just the general conventional reaction. I feel like also I've always been the type of person who loves a challenge and sees the way I am is I go through life kind of, with this mentality of fire, ready, set, or fire, aim, ready kind of thing. So I go, ready, set. It's like, whoa, MaryAnne's all the way over there. And you know, Gunil, you can laugh because you totally know that's how I was.
I love this woman. I mean, it's just like
I can so relate to that idea.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my
because
God.
I'm the type of person that learns as I go. Like I have to do, and that's kind of like it's a behavior. I need to move. I need to get into action. I need to get my hands dirty, and in that I learn. I mean, I totally appreciate and respect other people who need to plan first and need to strategize first, and that's great for them, and that really works. That's their successful strategy. So for me, it was just, you know, so my relationship with the word and the meaning of failure, I think, initially was definitely this sense of, you know, failure is not good, and you know, the whole traditional sense. But I really loved for me, quickly, as I learned, I just started to make sort of, what's the word? I disintegrated that meaning to something new, because it was just shifting perspective, really.
My sense of failure was pretty dramatic, and
Right.
it was rooted in my father, who was, you know, whose first experience, one of the first memories in his life is a 5-year-old child in Japan this is during World War II, and he sees all these amazing fireworks in the sky, and he's mesmerized by that. It turns out to be napalm, right? And the next thing he knows, it's like people are getting, like, you know, literally melting, right? And the entire world is just dying. And as a 5-year-old, to have that kind of a first experience of like beauty and death, like, oh my God, the world is not safe, right? So his entire worldview has been embedded on that sort of traumatic experience. And so for him, failure literally was life and death. Like, you know, my experience of growing up with failure is like, you know, you fail and you die. I'm like, oh my God, I can't fail. Like, it's just such a limiting way of living. Like, I can't do anything, you know. And I didn't realize how afraid I was to fail until I got to college and I had to learn to fail. And so I've had this visceral like reaction to it, and I knew in my gut, like, okay, you got to learn how to fail, because otherwise you can't grow. I just felt it, and now I know it. I've embedded it. But I think what was really powerful about the whole time with MaryAnne and friends was the community, right? I think individually we would have been like, oh my God, right? But like the community that we had was so full of love and friendship and joy and just like encouragement, and like we just so wonderful, right? And again, I come back to that word love. I think there was so much of it in there. that's what sustained us. That's what gave us absolute like courage and a sense of like, you know, not, like literally anything is possible. Like we can do this. Like, we got this. It's not going to be a problem. Even though it was something I didn't know how to swim when we first started training for.
Oh my God, that's right.
I did not know how to swim.
Holy shit.
And you were a great swimmer. I was like, oh, fuck, how am I going to do this, right? But like, it was like this community. And I think that's such an important thing, Michele, is just this community that you need to pull together to create this sense of overcoming fear. And by the way, one little thing I learned, I think I shared this with you, Michele. If you take the word fear out of the word failure, you're left with ILU. Isn't that neat, MaryAnne?
That's awesome.
It's true. I was like, wait a minute.
It is really interesting to hear how you almost like you formed the community first. And there's a lot of overlap, I think, in these types of communities and friendship, right? In some ways it's like what friendships should aspire to be. But, you know, I think there is something to organizing it with a concept like a failure club. So I'm kind of curious now, as you moved into that, okay, we are making a failure club, you know, we're launching this idea. What then became, how was it different than what you were doing before? It sounds like in a lot of ways it was similar because you were kind of supporting each other and, you know, knowing that failure was out there, but you were trying to get through it. But how did it make it different when you said, okay, we're going to start this failure club, and you actually launched that?
Thanks. We set up a structure. We met every week physically, and I think it was usually at your apartment, Gunil, right?
Mm-hmm.
I needed that in my life because I'm not naturally a very structured person. And so, you know, it was kind of like a team. We were part of a team, creating this team and having it be as solid or just this anchor of a team. And also to hold, so we had like goals for the actual club. And then I think, you know, Gunil, you can chime in, whatever, because I don't know why. I think at the time, I had just met my husband at the time. I'm not really, it was right before I met him. Or
Just before. You were being courted. You were being courted by a lot of attractive men at the time.
I was having the best time, man. Anyway,
whoa! Look at all these guys.
But I have to say that I remember one particular meeting. My goals had shifted. I think like you guys were very career driven. You guys had like so many like goals, like numbers, like true, you know, figures that you really wanted to achieve and fail and achieve and all this and that. And I remember one time, I think Philip asked me, he's like, so what's your next goal? And I said something totally way out in left field. And I was just like, well, I want to be married by the end of, you know, I think I was 31 and I was getting broody and, you know, the clock was ticking, whatever. And I just, even though, yes, I was having great fun dating and that single life in New York City, it was very exciting. I was coming down to like a new, like desire. Like I really wanted something different, something new. And so I remember saying, well, I see myself getting married and really focusing on that and then like having a child soon. And I just kind of, I got very, I got really bullshitty like about myself, and Philip's like, he just called me on it. He's like, oh, you'll totally do that. It just seems so far away from me. And that was really the essence of the club. Like declaring a goal. And when the person declares it, it's so far away for that person. They get that reaction of, oh God, I'm going to fail. And like, you know, they can't see through all the obstacles, et cetera, et cetera. And yet the team, you guys held well, we called each other on the bullshit, and then we also held each other accountable, and then we just supported one another with that. So I don't really remember the structure or anything beyond that, but anyway, the long story short, I ended up meeting this guy. And yeah, so it does, it totally was, it worked, so to speak. I mean,
so tell me a little bit more about how or why you think it worked. I mean, so obviously the idea of declaring a goal was like, oh, maybe I didn't fully articulate to myself that I even wanted this to happen, right? And then when you say it, it's like, oh, okay, I've made this my goal. So then that gives you something to sort of work towards. But what were the practices, like your day-to-day or your thinking, that you changed that made it so that you were now kind of open to achieving that goal?
I don't know, Gunil, why don't you chime in, because you have a different memory.
Sure. Boy, that's a deep question. I feel like there are different levels to that, right? So, and I can't distinguish between what I learned then versus what I'm learning now as I go through my book project at the moment. So I'll sort of mix them up a little bit. But I think first of all, there's a sort of a metaphysical / spiritual element to it, which is that when you declare something and you have an intention that says, and this is really, really important, like you've got to be clear on what your intention is before you say anything, before you do anything. What is my intention, right? And I find that for myself, like, as I said about something, if I feel like I'm blocked by something, if I feel like I'm afraid of something, if I feel like I've got a big important milestone coming up, I've got to be really clear about my intention, because it helps to ground how I am, first of all, and then from there everything else comes out. But I think that when you declare something, really put it out there and say, this is my goal, it creates momentum, it creates energy, it creates something that lets you move towards it. So that's declaring is one thing. Number two, having your friends push you. There's a BS meter that says, yeah, you got that. No, that's not exciting. More than that. No, seriously, that's what it was. It's like, no,
I remember you guys
got tomorrow. Come on, that's not inspiring.
You guys all the time.
Yeah, exactly. You're not gonna fail at that. That's bullshit. Come on, like, right? Like, what is really beyond your limit? Like, so there is this way of like your friends and the people who love you seeing you for your full potential, rather than being limited by your own limited view of yourself, right? So they go, oh, you totally got that. You could do that tomorrow. Like, what the fuck? Like, come on, dream bigger. And that encourages you. It makes you go, really? Do you think I can? Okay, right? Totally. So you're not limited by your view, because your friends are there to say, dream bigger. This is your limit, right? And the whole thing in my mind about this Failure Club is to explore your boundaries, right? Because if we're not pushing ourselves and failing day to day, we're living in this little box of success. I haven't failed, which means you haven't pushed yourself. Your muscles aren't like, I can't lift anymore, right, MaryAnne? Right? It's like, you haven't pushed yourself, you haven't stretched. And that's the whole point of failure, is stretch, grow, right? So I think your friends can help set a goal for you that they think is at the edge of the limit of your ability. And the third part of it, I think, is holding each other accountable to say, did you back out on your promise? Right? Did you actually do it, or were you just kind of slacking off, right? And I think that is the hardest part. The hardest part is holding each other accountable, because you want to be nice to each other, you want to be kind to each other, you're friends, and you don't want to hurt each other's feelings. And to call each other on like BS on each other, hard. I'm right now, as I work on my book, I've got a writing buddy that we talk almost every day, and we check in. We're like, what did you work on today? Or what are you going to work on today? And we have to be really honest and push ourselves and be like, well, what did you do? Like, what was that like? And the part of the reason why I reached out to you and many others to say I'm working on this is so that people will be like, what happened? Right? Like, hold me accountable because I put it out there, right? And that's kind of the concept, part of the principle of the Failure Club expanded into a much bigger set of people, right? But like, having your community hold you accountable for your dreams, for who you say you're going to be, and the community saying, yes, we want that, right? We need that, right? We expect that of you. Where are you? Why aren't you showing up? you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's a critical part of it. And I don't know that we did that all that well, honestly, when we did it, because we're, you know, friends. We're like,
I know. We're just like, yeah, let's just, what, is it time to pop open the, yeah.
Well, I think, Michele, as you work on really formalizing this, I think one of the key things is what's the structure by which you really, really hold everyone accountable for their work, right?
Yeah.
That integrity is super important.
Yeah. You know, when you were sharing that and describing that, I think that the reason why we were so tight and we were able to have this club and it be successful and we really enjoyed it is the community, as you say, because I think that we really our BS meters were really, really sensitive. And I think that because we knew about each other's fears and insecurities, and, you know, we knew a lot about one another's lives, you know, and I think that that's really important. There's a part of the human aspect of really stripping down the layers, because, you know, like you were saying, Gunil, like you have to go beyond the first sort of, we're going to come up with a lot of excuses. We're going to show up with this big act or some role that we're trying to fit in to make people believe in some story, in some sort of, do you know what I mean?
I had a rough day. I had a rough day.
And I think that is a key element in any failure club, because, you know, you can't, if you're not stepping up and you're not playing 100%, which involves, you know, like sharing and really being vulnerable. And it's like, where's that vulnerability coming from? Like if you can't, if there's something holding you back, you know, because there's a lot of the stuckness and being stuck in actually like taking action when your teammate or your community says, oh my God, you can totally do this. Like, why haven't you done that job that you said you were going to do by next week? Or, you know, by today. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you know, it's like this excuse and that excuse. Well, it's just like, there's something blocking you, something's there. And there's usually a story behind that. And that was where Gunil and Philip really, they saw right through me. They were just like, just that thing where it was just like, what? You know, it was just, and yet we make up these stories in our minds. Like, we just sell ourselves short. And that's where the support came from, the people in our group. So
my project with the Failure Club was to turn it into a book or a movie. And then what wound up happening was Philip wound up doing that with, what's his name?
Morgan Spurlock.
Like, so it was weird how it turned out, where like Philip wound up connecting with Morgan Spurlock, and then that turning into that. So it's in some ways, I think that when you put it out there, it can morph. Like, the idea can morph and find a way to manifest in the world in a way that you didn't envision. And part of, at least for me, part of the lesson in that process was that creation happens in ways that you don't expect. When you sort of declare something, and sometimes you get created in ways that's really different from how you expected it. And if you are true to your creation, you can be much more active and create it yourself and be involved and be part of that process, or let go and let it happen somewhere else. And it'll manifest. And that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. So Michele, so you finished your book? Did you?
So there's 2 books.
Okay.
I decided, because of the whole thing happening with coronavirus, I was like, I've been working on a longer book about creative success and failure, entrepreneurial success and failure. And part of it was a description of how we run the Mastermind Failure Club and how to start your own group. That was a chapter in the book. And seeing how I just know, like, artists and writers are in such a precarious situation right now. And I feel like they can so benefit from this idea. So I just decided to, like, I'm going to launch just that chapter essentially into a book. And so I adapted it. It's a short book. It's like 30 pages. And I launched it as a Kindle book. I just recorded an audio version. So I'm going to put out an audio version of it. But And then I figured, all right, well, good. Let's see if I can build some audience with this, and then it will work towards the longer book, which it's really more about like the philosophy of failure, and kind of really picking apart how we see success in our society, and how it seems to like just always be more. It's like you can never actually reach it because you're always like climbing towards it and never getting there.
Yeah.
But you know, the other side of that coin is the failure, right? And so I think that the reason we're so, as a society, we so desperately want success is because we're so deeply afraid of failure. And so, you know, kind of addressing that fear helps us not only be less afraid of failure, but not be so, so reliant on success in some traditional senses. So
I think philosophically that is such an important, at least for me, such an important element of the Failure Club is just this recognition that society has such a negative view of failure. The word itself evokes a whole bunch of negative emotions, concepts. Your mind goes into a different place, right? And the way that education is structured, the way that work is structured, the way that everything, just like failure is something to be avoided. And what if you could just turn that off, right? What if you could turn that into something that's actually a positive? What would that enable, right? So that was part of the core sort of philosophy behind it, was like, how do we not make failure such a negative in the world? And yeah, so I'm glad you're...
I mean, in the writing that you have about Failure Club, you kind of positioned it as something you were aiming for, right?
Totally, completely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Did you ever see the movie The Game with Michael Douglas?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, go check it out.
Okay.
Check it out. It has a complete surprise ending, an absolute, like, and I won't tell you because it's great. But for me, it was sort of, that was one of the genesis of the Failure Club was the surprise ending, and so the way that we talked about the Failure Club in the beginning was that in the end, when everything is done and all the projects have been accounted for, you know, if you haven't shown up and you didn't put your best, that's the real failure. That's like, okay, you actually didn't, you know, you weren't there. So it's like, we love you, but come on, you can do better than that, right? If you showed up and you've met your goals, then we're like, congratulations, you did it, great, good job, right? But it's not a big deal because, okay, you didn't stretch. You actually underestimated your goals, right? You're like, yeah, it's okay, we'll see, right? And then the third is when you actually fail, those are the people you celebrate because you go, you actually hit your limit. How often does that happen in life where you actually hit your limit, right? And you go,
that's what we did. That was the goal with our club. Philip was like, we're going to have a party when you fail.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So celebrate the failures because that's when you really live. That's when you're like really, like literally at the edge of your capacity. Like, how often does that happen?
No,
really?
I know.
Right?
I know.
And that was so inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so in your group, how many people were there in that first group? There was like 9 or something, right?
9, 10, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many people failed and how many people succeeded in that first group? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
MaryAnne succeeded. You failed.
You underestimated, right?
You failed to fail.
You failed to fail.
Well, yeah, that's how we go.
Oh man, it's just like which part of the circle is it? You know, it's like I think that another part of the club is that so the goal is to fail and to find the magic inside that failing. And at the same time, it's in the doing of it. It's almost like I think that we loved the concept because so this was after the Ironman. So our experience in training was a constant we were constantly up against that because when you train for, they always say like you can fake a half Ironman, you can't fake an Ironman. And when someone told me that, I was just like, what, really? And I was like, you can't fake a half Ironman. And they're like, you can kind of, but you can't fake it. So the training that was involved for the Ironman, because we did the half, right? Did we do
Yeah, the first one we did was a half. Yeah.
Yeah, we did the half. And so the training was, because we had never done anything like this before, so the training was grueling. But, it was just like all perspective and it was all relative. And so it was just it was like the muscle, the training that we did. But the level of training and concentration and focus that we needed to train for the Ironman, it was like we were always up against the limitations. Like, I don't know if I can do this. Like I'm going to fail and I'm going to fail. And like each time you met that sensation of, oh man, I'm like failing. I'm like totally sucking and like just that mentality. We were facing that all the time, every week. And that is really what is involved in kind of what you're experiencing, what we want people to experience inside the Failure Club. So that training, that sense of, oh my God, I don't know. And that point of right when you think you can't do it anymore, and then you stretch, the people there are stretching you, and you've stretched, and it's just that part where you stretch beyond, that was like the thing that really, that's where you learn.
That's where you grow.